Hi guys, I wanted to try something a little bit different and tell you the story of how I created a little show called What Would Beyonce Do. So if you're interested in behind the scenes stuff, here it is. So I started stand-up comedy when I went to university, and the only reason I picked Salford University is because it had stand-up comedy as a module and did acting, classical acting and performing arts. And I had my heart set on stand-up. I don't know why. I never really watched stand-up. I loved American comedians, but I loved American comedy actors. Like I loved Whoopi Goldberg, I loved Steve Martin, Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy. I loved watching stuff like George Carlin, but that was more later. I just loved watching these really funny, brilliant American performers. And I saw stand-up comedy as a module, and I thought that's what I want to do. When I graduated with the first, and in my showcase, I was the first to go up to do stand-up. I was the opener, which is often the hardest spot. And I did it, and I didn't enjoy it. Like I kind of had to break the room, didn't enjoy it, stayed away from it for a while, and then had the calling and the urge to go back. And I wasn't getting on stage any other way, so I started doing stand-up on the open mic circuit. I lived in Farnborough with my mum, and it was about a 40-minute train journey to get into London to do a show. So I worked as a postwoman in the day, and I worked in a bar in the evenings, and I worked in Wilkinson's stacking shelves and boxes, and I worked in IT support, and I did any temp job that I could just to be able to earn enough money to get on the train to go do a 5-minute spot in the UK. And so that's how I started. I started stand-up. Initially I looked at stand-up courses in America, and there was a master's course you could do in America in comedy. And I called this place, and they said, hey, there was this Irish guy, you should contact him, he'll know about it, let me put you in touch with him. Spoke to this Irish guy, said, you don't need to go to America, you can do comedy right here. There's a guy that does a course in London, why don't you do the course, you can make some friends, get you back on the circuit. So I signed up for this course by a guy called Logan Murray, did the stand-up, and then I kept doing open mics. And I could be great in a room of 12 people, but the second there was any pressure to do stand-up, I just seemed to not be able to deliver. I'd freeze up, I wouldn't be able to deliver. And I remember in those days you needed an agent, or the idea was to get an agent that could get you more spots and more paid work and all that stuff. And whenever I got shortlisted for a showcase with an agent, I would just die. I would completely bomb. I would always bomb. And I don't know what would happen. Like there'd be a room of like 6 people and I could smash it with those 6 people. The second there was a full room with people watching, waiting for you to do comedy, like the conditions were right, I just didn't do well. I remember entering the Funny Women Awards, and that was kind of the comedy awards that was encouraged for women to go through, and that you could get a showcase and get seen by loads of agents and a panel of judges. And I remember entering, and I got through the first round. I was so proud of myself, I was so happy. And I got through, and then I remember the owner of the awards at the time called me and said, look, I'd really like to put you through, but I just can't. Like doing what you do and looking what you look like, it's not nice for women like you to do material like that. It's very crass. It's not nice. Why don't you let me rewrite your material for you, and then I'll consider putting you through. I was heartbroken, because I would go on stage and talk about dating and guys and not getting a text back and being an insecure female chasing Mr. Unavailables, right? Audiences loved it. People behind the scenes didn't really like it, but audiences loved it. So I just kept gigging by myself, and I started working with a place called Musical Bingo, where it was a really joyous, fun night where I'd host a night, and I played bingo, but you play bingo with music rather than numbers. So you'd hear a song, you'd mark it off, and if you got songs in a row, you'd shout bingo, and you could come up and win a cheese toastie maker. People would go mad for a cheese toastie maker, and I couldn't understand why I could get people to go absolutely batshit cray for a cheese toastie maker, but not for my jokes. Like, how did I make people feel like that about my jokes? So I went to Chicago, went to Second City, studied clowning, studied improv out there, came back, ran some improvisation classes, quit the day jobs, ran some improvisation classes, was gigging the evenings with all my newfound skill set, knowing that I could get people to go mad for a cheese toasting machine, knowing that I could do clowning or improvise, that I could go up with new material, that I could work it out. Yes, I didn't fit in with the other side of it, but I fitted in with audiences, and I was finding my way through the art, right? And slowly, I started going to Edinburgh, and I did a kids comedy show. I did an adult comedy show. I did Shakespeare for kids. I did improvisation for kids. I did improvisation for adults. And I did about 9 shows in Edinburgh over the years. And each of them you would share your show with another comic. And the year before I did my debut, I went out with a comedian called Rachel Anderson, who's a phenomenal comedian, doesn't do it anymore, such a shame. She was brilliant. And she's what you call a closer, so you'd put her on to end the show. And because of the way Edinburgh was set up, what I would do is I had to finish my improvisation show, run across town over the bridge, and get on time to be on stage at the second show. But it meant Rachel had to open. So for 24 nights, I had to follow Rachel, and I dreaded it because she was a closer. So because she was so good, the fact that I had to follow her meant that I learned how to get really good. Like I learned how to get good enough to follow a strong opener. That helped me a lot. And when I came out, I thought, you know what? What's my next year in Edinburgh? I've done the kids shows, I've done the adult shows, I've done everything. It's time to do a solo show. So what would my solo show look like? Now this was at a time I had short hair, I had it permed, and I had permed hair like this, but it was also sort of short, like a Whitney Houston in the 80s. And I used to love wearing these big gold earrings. I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. And I loved playing the black circuit. I loved playing the urban circuit. And I loved reaching out to audiences that were from mixed backgrounds and mixed faiths and races and girls and gays. They were my audiences. And I wanted to speak to them because I was like, that's where I'm loved. That's where I feel like I belong. And I love Beyonce, right? I love Beyonce. And so I started putting material together for that audience, right? For my audiences. Talking about dating, talking about relationships, talking about having a foreign mummy, talking about these things. And I started collecting all my material together, and I was trying to think of a show title. And very often in Edinburgh, what they would have is they would have the comedian's name with a pun on it, and it had nothing to do with the show. And I used to find it such a British, boring, white middle class game of like, oh, pun on the name. It was boring. Why would you go see that? So I was like, how do I create a title that lets people know, oh, this is a show for you. If you like this title, you're going to love this show. And so me and my best friend Vicky, we went to Wetherspoons once, and it was midday, and we were drinking Blue Lagoon out of a jug in a onesie. And we were like, what are we doing with our lives? We've graduated, but what are we doing? And she said, you know, we're the same age as Beyonce. And I was like, what? We're the same age as Beyonce, and she's selling out the Wembley Arena this weekend. And we're drinking Blue Lagoon at Wetherspoons at midday on a Wednesday. What would Beyonce do? And that became a bit of a phrase that I would use often, what would Beyonce do? So when it came to picking the show and creating the show, I thought, right, I can get people to go mad over a cheese toastie. I like Beyonce, I've got all these jokes. I had all these jokes, and I wrote down on a piece of paper, and I'll show you how it worked. Basically, I'd get an A3 pad, and I would write all my jokes out on an A3 pad. This isn't the original one. I have got the original one, but I can't find it in the attic, so forgive me. And I'd write all my different jokes out on this. So I'd have cow material over here, like I'd do jokes about cow, a relationship boat analogy over here, texting a guy, how long does it take to boil an egg over here, and I had it all on this piece of paper. And I thought, you know what though? People get bored watching comedy, like I get bored, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what they do in bingo and play a song. So I'll do a joke, and then 10 minutes later I'll play a song. And so initially what I started doing is started going to previews, and a preview is where you like rehearse a show. And I'd put a show on, and I couldn't get into comedy clubs, so I couldn't get booked for previews, but I could get booked in gay bars and rooms above pub for free. So I would go to gay bars and say, look, I want to do a show for free. Can I just try it at 6 p.m? There was a club called Top Secret Comedy Club in Covent Garden. And the guy there said, look, you can get on before the show at 6 o'clock. And I was the first preview to ever go on at 6 o'clock, a Top Secret Comedy Club in Covent Garden. And I'd have to fly to get people in so I could work out my material. And so what I'd do is I'd do some jokes and then I'd play a Beyonce song, right? It didn't make any sense, but I did that, right? And then it wasn't until a friend came along who said, why don't you structure your material so you put your material in themes, so theme it, and then match the song to the theme? Genius idea, why I hadn't thought of this. So then I started putting things together. So I would start with, well, here's all body image stuff. So what's the song to go with that? Bootylicious. Here's all love stuff and breakups. What's the song to go with that? Single Ladies. Here's a song that's all to do with my mum being a legend. Girl, right? Supportive. And I started putting it together like that, right? And then another friend said to me, because I told her about the show, she was like, why don't you call it What Would Beyonce Do? And I was like, yeah, I'll call it What Would Beyonce Do? It's a great idea. So I called it Louisa Homeland's What Would Beyonce Do? So I had the title, I had the ideas with the jokes, and I had the songs. My first previews was in Brighton. So Brighton's an incredible place to try comedy. And I used to do the show and I would end on a Cher song. I'd say, I know you guys love Beyonce, but actually my true love is Cher. And I would disappear behind a curtain, I'd get some suggestions from the audience and I would improvise a Cher song. And it wasn't until about 12 shows in, a friend came to watch and became a really good friend. I came along and said, why don't you end on a Beyonce song? And I said, why would I end What Would Beyonce Do on a Beyonce song? Obviously I'll end on a Cher tribute, improvised musical song. And he said, no, you should end on a Beyonce song. And I thought, well, what Beyonce song could I possibly end on? And then it was in the background, in my head. And then it was Christmas time, and Christmas had come along, and I'd had a horrible Christmas where my brother took an overdose and tried to commit suicide, and I hated it. And I'd broken up with my ex-boyfriend. I started seeing him date somebody else, and I hated it. And I went to meet my friend Jason, and he said, come on, let's do a gig. I said, I can't do a gig. I don't feel funny at all. I can't do a gig. And I got on stage at Christmas, just after New Year. I think it was maybe Boxing Day or whatever. And I went on stage and talked about suicide attempt, talked about seeing ex with somebody else, talked about all this heartbreaking stuff. Mimed Adele, Someone Like You, which was big at the time, and slid down a wall. And I loved that ending. And so that actually, I was like, oh, that's beautiful. People really laughed. I got a standing ovation that night. And I used that in my previews. I used to end on my previews by sliding down a wall to Adele. Then I'd get up, sing a Cher song. Then I was watching videos of Destiny's Child. And I came across the Survivor video, which is where she's crawling in the sand. And then she sees a helicopter and she gets up. And I got goosebumps. And I called my mum in and said, watch this. And I sang Adele, slid down a wall. And I got up and I did this song. And that became my ending. And it just felt magic. I loved it. It just felt incredible. So then it comes, what do you wear? What do you wear? So I'd have permed hair, I'd have my big gold earrings in, and what did I want to wear on stage? And I liked wearing stuff on stage that was clowny, that felt fun to wear. And I remember going to Sheffield University to do a preview, and I was with a friend and we walked along to the shops, and we went into the shop and it had like a bargain bucket in the middle, and I saw these woolly trousers, right? Just these woolly ski trousers, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're so much fun, I'll buy them. You can see they've got holes in the thighs, look at that. They must have been about £8, maybe more, 28, about that, I don't know. And I bought them and I loved them. I thought, oh my gosh, these are so much fun. And I had them. And then we went to a charity shop, and hanging in a charity shop, this isn't the original's long gone, but my mum sewed this is the one that my mum sewed for me, but this is pretty much exactly like the original. And it was a gold glittery top in a charity shop, and it must have been £1.50, and it was hanging on a hanger outside the charity shop, and I loved it, and I thought, oh, I'll buy that, I like that. And when I went into this shop, I had this in my bag, and I said, hang on a second. And I put the two on together, and I loved it. It was ridiculous, and I loved it. And I did the show that day in Sheffield with this on, with these two pieces on. And then when I'd preview, I'd wear this outfit, and it became my show outfit. I loved it. It was ridiculous. I loved it. So then I needed a poster, and I needed a cool poster to appeal to my audiences that it was a cool show and that you'd love it, and it was for the girls and the gays, and it wasn't the typical, what I now know is white middle class, but at the time we didn't have all those terminologies, I didn't use those. I just wanted my audiences that were mixed from all over, girls, gays, that's who I wanted, a celebration. And so years previously in Edinburgh, a friend of mine had walked down the street and we saw some kids graffiti on the wall, and it was really expensive to get posters in Edinburgh, thousands of pounds to have posters around the city. So I paid these kids like a £5. I said, look, will you graffiti our showtime on the wall for us? They did, and it helped us get an audience. And I remembered that, and I thought, that's what I want for my poster. So the photographer from the musical Bingo also did graffiti. He did it in his spare time. So I called him, we went to the South Bank, and I sat against the South Bank wall, and I wore my outfit, and he graffitied What Would Beyonce Do onto the wall. And that became a picture, that was a picture, and snapped the picture, and that became my poster. So all of this obviously was added on afterwards, but this image right here, I've actually got it on my mug here that I used to hold pencils, if you can see, that's the original image. that's me sat on a wall with my outfit. And I made the poster, so I had a great poster, had a great title, went up to Edinburgh, and I had a little radio with a remote control. And what I had was my iPhone plugged into the radio with a remote control, plugged into the speaker. So the radio had like this big speaker, and I'd have a remote control so I could fast forward and pause the track. And so I played in a room above a pub called the Meadow Bar. There was like a tiny little 60-seater, and it was next to the toilets because you could hear the hand dryers go off all the time. And I would have a queue. I arrived on my first day, and there was a queue of people outside. And I showed up in my trousers and my top, and there was a queue of people outside. I said, "Oh, what are you here for?" And they said, "Oh, the Beyonce show." I was so happy. I was so happy. And I came up the stairs. Why am I going to cry? And I came up the stairs, and there's a show on before me, and I'm letting everybody out. And you've only got a few minutes to turn around between shows. So I'd start clearing the glasses, moving stuff out. And people would be coming in, and it'd be dead, it'd be quiet. So I started playing some music. I started playing music as they were coming in. And I had good music on. And there's a song called Fighter by, I'll play it for you now. There's a song called Fighter. I'll find out who it's from. And I was like, that needs to come on before I start the show, because that's what I am. I'm a fighter. So this was the song. Here we go. And so I learned actually what to do. The best thing to do is to play music as the audiences come in that pumps them up, that gets them ready for the show. So that's what I did, and I just made sure that every time I did the show, before the show started, this song would have to play. So the audience would be coming in, I'd be clearing glasses, and this song was going on. And I'm like, I got this. I didn't have a team, I didn't have anyone with me, but I had a dream. And so I'd be there getting ready. And then the show would start, right? And I'd have to introduce myself and be like, "Welcome to stage, me." And then what happened, what I realised, is after a few shows, I was like, no, I'm too fly for this. I should get somebody else to come and introduce me. So what I would do is get everybody sat down, have music playing, and I'd be dancing as they're coming in, getting them ready, getting them in the zone. And this song would start. This would kick in. Give me scars, give me pain. And they'll say to me, say to me, say to me, there goes a fighter, right? There goes a fighter. And I had to have that in my head to be like, come on, you can do this, like Rocky. And then I'd get an audience member on stage to introduce me. So I was like, right, can you come up? And I'd be like, can you say my name? Not Omi, not Omilobanon. I'm a man. Omilan. It's very simple. Just say it. And I'd get somebody to introduce me. And that's how I started the show. And ever since that, every one of my shows, I'm on stage as the audiences come in with music playing, because you're coming into my house. And then it was Edinburgh, it was August, the weather would be all over, and I would walk to the show in a hoodie over my jacket. And it wasn't until the music was playing and I was clearing stuff and audience were coming in, sitting down, and I took off the jacket and somebody went, "Whoop-woo, whoop-woo." And I thought, of course, clowning, use that. So then part of the show became that I had my jacket on, my hoodie. I would come in, clear the glasses, do the pre-show dancing, get an audience member to introduce me. Then I would come on stage and I would undo the jacket, take it off, whip it round, throw it off, and the audiences would go mad. And it was amazing. It was amazing. It was the most beautiful, beautiful show. And that show helped me get a career in comedy. I let her start one, and it broke so many molds. And it was the show at the time. People used to say, "Oh, you can't do music in a show. You can't be music. Why are you talking about mental health in a show? Why are you talking about suicide and depression over a boy in a show? Like, that's really embarrassing. Why are you dancing and singing? Like, you're a girl doing comedy. Why are you wearing big gold earrings? Like, that's really crass." And it was beautiful. Audiences just loved it. Audiences absolutely loved it. And my heart just sang. So happy. So that's some behind the scenes of what Beyonce do. Let me know if you enjoyed this video and if you'd like me to make more. Thank you for supporting.